I never imagined myself here. I didn't grow up thinking I'd put myself on the front lines. I was just another neighbor, a parent, a friend. I'm not a hero. But one day I stepped inside this firehouse and saw what it meant to be part of something bigger. What it meant to answer the call.
Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Vieira. I am the director on the Step Forward Volunteer Fire Department commercial. Join alongside with Joseph Flaz, my DP on this project. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the production of the actual commercial itself. This is part 2 of a 3-part series, so if you guys do want to see the other aspects to this video, feel free to click one of the links above somewhere, or in the description down below, you'll be able to find part 1 or part 3, whichever one you haven't watched, feel free to check that out. So we look to break the video down into three main components. So we kind of have the calm before the storm, then kind of things pick up a little bit more when the call comes in and all the firefighters are rushing to get gear on. They head out that firehouse and then they find themselves at the training facility. And so we're gonna be kind of diving into each of those sort of phases in the video. And so the first thing first, of course, being the calm before the storm inside the firehouse and then kind of how that went about. So I'm gonna kind of lean on you a little bit here in terms of like, what was your sort of goal when it came to showcasing that calmness, and talk to me how you felt it went in terms of all of those scenes that kind of involved that. So things like the rec room, the dispatch room, before we kind of got into the hecticness inside the apparatus room.
So having seen the rec room and getting to know like how everything is set up in there, the rec room being one of the cookie cutter shots that we needed for all 4 videos. I know for a fact we tried to hide any branded material that we could find inside the room. So for Holbrook, I know they had one of the Holbrook badges on the wall.
Yeah, I think they had like a really large one, just like table, right across the wall. And
easy solution, you know, just angle the camera a little to the side, have one of the walls just cut off the Holbrook sign.
Yeah, that was a good call.
And then you get that shot that you can use for all 4 fire departments. Same thing with the dispatch room, you know. And there we tried keeping it mostly natural lighting, because I feel like we just use like tube lights just to get a little fill on the side.
Yeah, we kind of keep things like look kind of minimal, because it was also like the space. Like
also, it was a pretty small space to like pack a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
We did some accent lighting just to like spice up the room, and also just keeping it with the monitors, giving it that cold kind of like feeling.
Yeah.
It definitely gives that sense of like something's about to happen, you know? And cutting back to the rec room, and then you see the alarms going off and people just running out. Created that sense of like, again, calm before the storm, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny too, like, I feel like I'm channeling my inner Christopher Nolan, but we wanted to do everything practically.
Yeah.
But I do really mean this in the sense of when it came to the actual alarm itself, the alarm was, as far as I'm aware, real. You know, they were able to actually call into like, I guess like the headquarters, the dispatch like headquarters, that like kind of like facilitates in terms of like them getting the information of, you know, a 911 call and being able to send out those like alerts and stuff like that, so then the dispatch can then do what they have to do. You know, they were kind enough to be okay with it, and we were actually able to kind of set off the alarm. We had the lights actually like going off and stuff like that, so that we were able to get the firefighters to feel as sort of in the moment as possible. we then found ourselves in the actual apparatus room or in the truck room. And so this is where we then set up the dolly again.
Yep.
And we had to kind of figure out where all of our volunteers were going to be running to, right? Like who was going to be going to what locker, who was going to be running through the background, stuff like that. So I kind of took some time and kind of, spoke with everyone and kind of really quick just kind of tried to piece together where I wanted everyone to kind of go through. Everyone was super on board and, was awesome in that regard. And I think we managed to kind of, depict it without it feeling too cheesy. I think it feels pretty good.
Yeah.
But we kind of keep touching on it, but it really is sort of like the sort of motto of this whole project is controlled chaos.
Luckily for all firehouses, we had pretty much the same setup of 3 trucks. We were able to put one 600X down the main aisle that we were going to be shooting through. Then we had a 300X on the back aisle shooting the same way, just to get that sense of the garage door that's right in front of the trucks. Other than that, we also have the truck lights going.
Yeah, that was a big help. It's almost one of those things where it's like, it probably does the most work in terms of lighting and like really kind of depicting that. It'd be kind of interesting if we just had those off for some reason.
Yeah,
it would just not feel the same. So those really kind of, did a lot of the heavy lifting for sure.
Yeah. I liked how the 600X, the 300X, they both created like spotlight for each character that was running through each aisle. I know we really wanted to use the smoke machine.
We did. A funny story on this, actually. We really want to kind of haze up the room a little bit, give a little bit more some atmosphere to the actual,
give it
to
that
the picture.
More cinematic feel.
Yeah, and so, we brought it, we had it ready to utilize, and we asked one of the chiefs if we were able to smoke up the room a little bit. And we got denied, rightfully so, and it does make sense, given the fact that it would feel a little bit embarrassing if the fire alarm were to go off in an actual firehouse. And so we were like, fair enough. And so we didn't actually end up using the smoke machine.
Ended up working out either way.
Yeah, I think it totally, it didn't make or break the shot at all. Or
it also
like
would have
that.
taken a lot more time to haze up the whole room.
Yeah,
that big,
it would have.
It saved us some time.
That's a great point. I think it really did save us a lot in that regard. So it's probably for the better.
Yeah, it worked out either way.
Well, when it came to the actual apparatus room, we knew that we were going to be doing this sequence in all 4 houses. And so we needed something, or a setup rather, that was going to work across the board. So we kind of made sure, especially, again, location scouting being kind of king for this, but we made sure that we were going to be able to kind of replicate this in all 4, and we definitely were able to do so. Once we established how we were going to set things up, we set this up at all 4 houses and just rinsed and repeat at each of them. Some things, some minor tweaks and changes here and there.
Had to move the lockers on some.
Yeah, the lockers being sort of the biggest component to it. Some of the houses had an actual, a closed off sort of locker portion, and others didn't, and they had just kind of this sort of top sort of shelf area on top of their locker, and so we just utilized that as the sort of supplement for it. Another sort of interesting shot that we want to also kind of incorporate was this sort of like oneer shot that we were looking to kind of get. Once everyone's kind of geared up, you see the firefighter, putting on his helmet and kind of making his way to get into the truck, and so we wanted to attempt something a little bit sort of unique, at least unique to us, not unique in the industry, but something unique to us that we haven't really, attempted something like this before. It was something that, we tested out briefly ahead of time, but we were just gonna kind of see if it was going to work or not.
I remember it was me on the camera walking back down the aisle with the main firefighter, and then I would reach the door and hand over the camera to Harrison in that scenario, and I would drop to the floor, hide under the truck, just so you won't see me in the shot, and the fireman would walk up into the fire truck, and that would be the ending of the shot. We had to do that multiple times.
Yeah,
which was not fun for me, at least.
I think it was like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Nothing too insane. I mean, I've heard on
that's
Hollywood that like you're getting up to like 20, 30 takes. But I think it definitely was one of the most amount of takes that I think we had to do for any particular shot, because of the fact that there was just so many variables to it that like something was kind of bound to like kind of be astray. But after that, then we kind of got some shots outside, the garage doors opening up, kind of trucks making their way out.
Keeping it simple, we used an Osmo Pocket 3. I attached it to suction cups onto my car, and a great feature of that camera is that you can control it with your phone. So we just paired it up to the phone.
The name of the game here is kind of a race against time, right? And so we were trying to maximize all that we can do. And so there were times where we kind of had to like change roles just a little bit to kind of make things work. So in this instance, we had Joseph still inside the truck getting some shots with the firefighters, you know, simple
just
stuff,
gearing
up, extra stuff in there. While, you know, Harrison was driving, then I manned the iPad. And then at later points, then I was driving and then Joseph was manning the iPad, you know, and so, you know, there's a lot of kind of trading off of there.
At Holbrook, I loved it because they were able to close down that stretch of the street. I forgot the name of the street, but
yeah, it was like one of like the main roads in Long Island.
And they were able to close it off for us. We were able to do a few laps around it and not get cars in the way. You know, we also want to keep this safe as possible for pedestrians and civilians around us. But then for the other fire departments, they also did the same at Sunrise Highway. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was like another like service road
stretch
where they were actually able to kind of at least close off like half of it, kind of direct some traffic into like the highway and stuff like that. So shout out to
fire police because
like that was a big help.
A lot easier for us. Because if not, we would have to do more takes than we already had.
Yeah.
You know?
That we couldn't
like
even
2 or 3 laps.
afford to do.
Yeah,
even as well, because of time. You know?
And we were able to do both the car chase and drone at the same time.
We had our producer Brendan on he was like our drone operator essentially on this project. I know Joseph kind of did a couple shots as well, but for the most part, Brendan was actually manning the drone. He got some okay stuff.
Yeah, we didn't use any of it.
He was the manning the drone at the same time that we were actually on the street, kind of getting a lot of our roller shots and stuff like that. Once again, just maximizing time and effort and manpower at the end of the day. But that was definitely a ton of fun. We tried to do that as quick as we could. I think we were out there for only like 30 to 45 minutes before we had to like honestly pack it up and like start getting to the next location. And so, but that was a lot of fun. And so that kind of wrapped everything up in terms of what we were gonna do individually with each of the houses. And so from there, we then get into the actual training facilities. And so our first stage was a sort of pre-planned shot that we wanted to get at the fire hydrant, where we had one of the firefighters come to the hydrant and plug in one of their hoses. And so this was going to be part of the flashback moments that you guys will probably see in the video. And so when it came to that, we wanted to try to get that done first, because once the fire started, there was really no, I mean, it's funny to say, there's really no of stopping it, but like at that point, you're literally on a time crunch. You know, the pallets that they were using and the daylight that we had at the end of the day was very limited, and so we wanted to kind of get through once we started that burn, we were gonna go.
And we only had one take.
And we only had one take, which was, I know for you, was one of the more nerve-wracking sort of parts of the whole project at the end of the day. Every firefighter, every chief knew what was going to be going on. This was all pre-planned during our pre-production phase of things. And so at this point, we were just listening in. We all had radios to be able to kind of hear in what the chiefs were sort of communicating, what they were saying throughout the process. So we kind of knew ahead of time of, hey, this truck was going to be coming in now, or you know, they're coming in 10 seconds, or whatever the case may be. We were able to kind of know ahead of time of what was going to be happening, so that we had our camera operators ready to go. And I'll let you kind of touch on sort of our sort of setup and what we did to cover that whole thing.
Yep, we had 2 people set with FX6s on each side of the taxpayer to get the most coverage that we could possibly get. We had one camera with the 200 to 600 getting the close detail shots of the firemen coming in with their hose or coming with the saw and breaking down the door. We had another camera with the 7200 trying to get the medium shots of all of them grouping up, you know, talking to each other, getting a game plan on. We also had the roaming cam with the FX3 on the gimbal, getting all the details, branding, little details that the other cameras weren't focused on. And same thing with like the drone, you know, getting the establishing shot of the actual building, getting all the fire in the air, stuff like that. At one point, I had my guide. He went with me to the back and he was able to like get me pretty close to the fire in the room, which is also one of the best shots that, in my opinion. It was pretty fun, pretty hot, you know.
Yeah. It was really nerve-wracking because, like, I think at one point, you know, we had all of the cameras on transmitters and we had receivers set up, sort of like a video village, essentially, behind the scenes. I was able to actually kind of take a look and see what all the cameras were looking at, so that I can just kind of give like loose guidance of what I wanted people to kind of focus on. I didn't want to kind of like dictate exactly what to get because I didn't want it to kind of feel like that. I trusted, everyone behind the camera, and so I really wanted to kind of just, say what I liked and what I sort of didn't like in the moment, or maybe focus on something else, but not necessarily say exactly what I wanted. But then at one point or another, when Joseph actually went with his guide and got those close-up details of like the firefighter inside of the actual burning building, the transmitter actually cut out. I think just because of distance and like
the building itself.
The building itself.
Huge. It was huge.
And so I was like, I had no idea what he got, so I had complete faith in him of just like, hope it went well.
Yeah.
And it turned out great, and it was amazing. After kind of reviewing the footage and stuff like that, I was really kind of blown away of what he was able to kind of get back there. We had a whole sort of meeting before the actual shoot to kind of talk to all the firefighters, be able to kind of let them know, like, hey, listen, of course, obviously we're filming today, so if you guys see a camera, you guys see a lens, don't look at the lens.
Just ignore us.
Pretend it's not there. Keep doing your thing. And everyone was on board, and everyone was awesome that day. And so, shout out to you guys, for having us in that respect. Once we kind of got everything that we needed in terms of the actual building being on fire and them kind of putting it out, I actually pulled Joseph away while our two operators were still, continuing to get whatever shots made sense to get the final scene in the commercial where you see a victim in the stretcher and you have one of the firefighters kind of guiding them to the ambulance with all of the EMS alongside as well. And so we had one of the probies, is actually a term that the firefighters use for the sort of new recruits on the squad. And so we had one of the probies on the stretcher. We had him change really quick to kind of seem like he was just a victim and he wasn't one of the firefighters that was actually probably just working and dealing with the fire. And we kept it very simple. We knew that, this was something that we didn't want it to be super like kind of overly like acted, I guess you could say. We wanted to keep something simple that they were able to do because they weren't necessarily experienced actors or anything like that. And so we just wanted to keep it simple of just, stop, take down your mask, give a nice thank you, make it feel as genuine as possible, and then just have the firefighter just kind of nod his head like all in a day's work kind of thing. And then he kind of rides off and goes back to his team to kind of finish off the job essentially. But yeah, at that point, that was pretty much it. It's still, even with a video like this, it's still an underestimated explanation of what went into it. There was tons more that went into it. A lot of long days, very tiring days. A lot of stuff we had to kind of think through. And it was, but at the end of the day, it was a ton of fun, and I wouldn't have traded that for the world, honestly. Like it was super sick to kind of get into. So at the end of the day, though, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, if you guys want to see the other parts of the series, feel free to click any of the videos that you see on screen. But aside from that, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out, and see you later.